arousal is responsive, not spontaneous. For most female-bodied individuals,
Mhm.
we're responsive. Okay. That engorgement, that response to stimulation really is like an all-day thing.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Sharice Williams Show, the only podcast created for highly conscious, high-impact, nurse-turned-entrepreneurs looking to create, launch, and scale a wildly profitable holistic health coaching and consulting business from a place of ease and flow, while also optimizing your wellness and vitality naturally. You guys, I am so excited about today's episode because I have such an amazing woman to share with you today. So let me tell you about her before I bring her on. So this beautiful soul has enjoyed a full ride scholarship to Yale, where she learned a mainstream approach to women's health as a nurse practitioner. She chose to go deeper, weaving a tapestry of expertise designed to address every level of a woman's well-being. In various forms, these look like functional medicine. She became a functional medicine practitioner, a certified doula, a midwife, herbal medicine. She's an expert in herbal medicine. How about Peruvian shamanism, Reiki, and so many more things? You guys help me welcome Maraya Brown. Hey, Maraya.
I feel like there's a crowd. Woo, woo, woo. Yeah, applause in the background. I feel excited to listen to myself.
Yay! I know, isn't it great to hear? Like, oh, that is me. Oh, fabulous. Welcome, Maraya. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me. It's nice to. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Me too. So I read a little bit of your bio. Share with us a little bit more about who is Maraya Brown.
Yeah, gosh, who is that? It's a good question. So yes, from medical training, I did the nurse practitioner training at Yale, and I specialized in OBGYN. So I'm called a certified nurse midwife.
Yeah.
Leading up to that, I had been a doula and attending births for about 7 years before I finished the CNM training. And yes, I really believe that food is our medicine and mindset matters, and energy is always impacting the whole holistic approach. And so every step of the way, I would be in Nicaragua or Ghana studying with the mountain midwives. And when I had a practice in Hawaii, I lived there for 7 years and ran the women's health at a federally funded clinic while attending births up at the hospital. And then with my extra time, there was a Chinese medicine college on island, and I would go to the Chinese medicine college and teach those students the Western medicine approach to women's health. And inevitably, they were teaching me a very different way of thinking. And then IFM, so functional medicine trained, and then I went all online starting in 2018. Outside of my work professionally, I'm a mother. I have 3 children that are still young. Right now, they're 10, 9, and 5.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a wife. My husband and I have been together for 16 years now. And it's one of those crazy romances where he proposed our first date.
What? I didn't know that. Well, that's fun.
Yeah. We've lived a really fun, dynamic kind of dive in life. And, now I feel like I get to bring it all together. I also did my undergrad in marketing and was in Fortune 50 for my first career out of school. And now I have the esteemed privilege of supporting ambitious women and men who are really hungry to feel spectacular. And just like you're saying, creating spectacular lives, knowing that whatever energy expenditure we put out, if we want a true ROI, I believe, and I think you share in this, we have the esteemed privilege of prioritizing our health, our wellness, and our foundational feeling of vibrancy.
Yeah.
And that's what creates the ROI, because it's not just what we do, but how we do it and how we make people feel. And so
Absolutely.
I get to support people all over the world to feel spectacular.
I love it. And I think you have the most fascinating story. I think, when I think about all the practitioners that I know, when I think about all the practitioners, female practitioners in particular, who are entrepreneurs, I don't know very many who can say that they've caught babies in, Nicaragua or Hawaii or whatever the case may be. So I think that's
Yeah.
very fascinating. That's a very fascinating part of your story to me.
Mhm.
And so, did you always know that you wanted to be an entrepreneur?
In some ways, yeah. So when
Yeah.
I look back,
Hmm.
I'm a midwife. Like, I am a midwife through and through, and
Yeah.
although right now I'm not doing obstetric care, I haven't attended a birth in about 4 years,
Hmm.
I still am midwifing people through chapters of change, and I
For
really
sure.
think of that being like I'm holding the container for them to rise and surrender and trust. And when I look back at my childhood, I was the one that would stay up for the kittens and the puppies to be born.
Oh.
And so I actually think I've been a midwife forever. And then
Yeah.
regarding entrepreneurship, I have a very unconventional upbringing. So I grew up in small town Oregon in Ashland. For those of you that might know Ashland and Mount Shasta, it's kind of like an energetic hub and hub for lots of creative, open, wild thinkers. And my dad was like transplanted New York Jewish. My mom was Buddhist and part of the Rajneesh commune, and my father was an entrepreneur, and so he was a sole proprietor, and he put me to work. So
Mm.
starting in sixth grade, I've worked since sixth grade, and I would, summertime, he put me in charge of bookkeeping or accounts payable and receivable, or even hiring or helping with new marketing strategies and advertising and branding. And so it just kind of was inevitable
Yeah.
that I would kind of follow suit, which then made sense why when I went to undergrad, I studied business and marketing, and then I worked with Procter and Gamble. But I always had this more kind of visionary aspect of me and wanting to go to by the beat of my own drum.
Hmm.
And I thought that maybe, just maybe, I could create change from the inside out with corporate America rather than the outside in. And then I realized,
No, that's not
yeah,
so much.
no,
Not
I'm
so
gonna
much.
go, I'm gonna go be a midwife instead.
Yeah, that's so
And
beautiful, though.
and so yes, entrepreneurship has always been a part of who I am
Yeah.
from a visionary. Like, I think if a business has a visionary, a priest, and a cop,
It sounds like a joke, but yeah, okay.
I'm not the cop, and I'm really not the priest. I like
You're
being
the
the
midwife.
visionary.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the missionary. That's hilarious. That's actually really funny. I love it though.
yeah, yeah,
I love that. And I would agree just from knowing you. I think we've known each other now for, I don't know what, 3 years, 2.5, 3 years, something like that.
yeah. We were
2020.
we were even roomies.
We were roomies. We were. We know each other intimately. No, I'm just teasing. No, we were roomies. And you have just like this spirit or energy of ushering in. So when you
Mhm.
mentioned, being a midwife, if I didn't know you, I think I would think of you in that vein, just from our interaction in person and even online. And then now hearing what you said about, staying up late for the kittens and all of that, I can totally see that. I
Yeah.
can totally see that. That's, yeah,
Mhm.
you're I think you were created to created for that, to
Yeah,
create it,
thank
to
you.
birth, to assist in with the birth of not
Thank you.
just, yeah, you're welcome, not just
Yeah.
humans, but visions and healths and the elevated versions of health. And
Mhm.
I love that. I love that.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so share with us a little bit more about what you have created inside the, I know you have a fabulous women vibrancy code. So can
Yeah.
you share with us a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. Well, first, for those of you listening in the podcast, if you're podcast listeners, there's the Women's Vibrancy Code podcast. You're welcome to listen there. The Women's Vibrancy Code is also a program. I say it helps women turn the lights on in the room again.
Mm.
So for the women who are feeling tired, they're not sleeping well, they're struggling with confidence, there might be some energy that's off with libido, whether that's feeling turned on by the work that they're doing, how they're seeing themselves in the mirror, how they're actually experiencing their sensuality and sexuality. It's for the woman who is really hungry to have big impact in the world, and knowing that her confidence and her worthiness are impacting that ripple effect.
Mhm.
And so the program is really holistic. I'm, of course, ordering the Plus test and GI map and serum labs and really looking at it through quantifiable eyes and
Mhm.
lens to address nutrition, supplementation, but also mindset and
Yes.
passion and vision. And I have a team of master coaches. And so women that come into that program are held in a really multidisciplinary approach. I also have evergreen courses and a membership. I host women's retreats. I'm planning a couples retreat.
Oh, how fun. That's
Yeah.
really, I love it.
And and then I do actually work with men more in a VIP one-on-one setting. But
Hmm.
once again, it's always through the lens of individuals who are ambitious and they want to be able to create spectacular impact without burnout.
Yeah.
And they want to prioritize their foundational health, but not like having to call and make appointments and wait in
Right.
line and drive and then, be told that their labs look normal and just get
Right.
another prescription.
That's so 1990 or so,
I
or
know.
2000s for that
Right.
matter.
Let's talk
Yeah.
about healthcare rather than sick care,
How
right?
about that? How about
Yeah.
that?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. And so I know we are talking today about feminine secrets revealed. And
Mhm.
so I so appreciate you sharing kind of who you are and your background and who you serve and all things Women Vibrancy Code. And now I would love for you to share some of these secrets, some of these
Yeah.
feminine secrets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know I could talk about it till I'm blue in the face. Where do we begin? Especially because your audience is predominantly women.
Right.
For those of you listening, it sounds like you're a healthcare provider yourself, which tells me that you're driven. You likely do what you say you're going to do. You're goal oriented, likely type A personality, likely organized. If you're listening and in Sharice's world, you're considering the possibility of building your own business and serving in a more broad way. And so with that, I think that sometimes we end up taking it all on and being so focused on serving everyone else, we'll save table scraps for ourselves.
Yeah.
And we sometimes get caught in the trap of this like 9 to 5 kind of masculine model where we expect ourselves to perform the same. Like my productivity, these are the things, the checklist that I check off every single day.
Yeah.
And I actually think that part of our feminine secrets to really allow them to be revealed is to honor that we are dynamic, ever changing beings and we have feminine and masculine, right? We
Right.
have push and pull.
Right.
We are the banks of the river at times, and we're the water within the river at times.
Mhm.
And that really changes based on an infradian rhythm, meaning like a month-long rhythm, a lunar cycle. For those that are bleeding, maybe it's around your menstrual cycle, but I want you to know that your period or your bleeding time is just one little sliver of it. We are very pulled by the rhythms of light and dark and full moon, new moon. And I know that sounds kind of woo woo, but the more that we honor this dynamic nature, it's spectacular to see what happens.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's where I would begin. I'm curious if you have any specific questions, Sheree.
Yeah, no, I love this discussion because, and this is something that I share all the time with my audience, whether through master classes or whatnot. But when we're looking at it from a place of entrepreneurship, what's been modeled for us is all coming all from masculine energy. It's the do this, and if you want more, you do more, and really not honoring that other side, that other piece. And it takes both. It takes a healthy, I like to call it a dance, between our masculine energy and our feminine energy. But
Yeah.
what we don't see, well, what we haven't seen so much of is really leaning into that feminine energy, really allowing, tapping into it and allowing it, understanding it, number one. Well, how about this? Recognizing it,
Mhm.
right? allowing it and really working with our bodies instead of against our bodies, and so that we do feel more fulfilled, so that we do feel, I'm doing air quotes for those of you who are listening, more productive, because there definitely are certain times in our cycle, and I know we're going to talk about this in a sec, that we are more lit up, on fire, creative, extroverted, versus other times in our cycle when, kind of just want to lean back a little bit, kind of allow the flow. It's just, we're different. And I think it's
Yep.
so important that we honor that and don't try to really continue to feed into the masculine way of building a business, because I think both you and I, and there's so many examples now of women, female entrepreneurs that are really tapping in to their feminine energy, their femininity, while they're building a business. So interesting
Yeah.
to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. And, I think of that feminine energy as our ability to receive,
Yeah,
our
absolutely.
ability to flow,
Yeah.
our ability to listen inside. And I think often it goes back to the worthiness conversation,
Hmm.
the inevitable delay that we will allow ourselves to get caught up in,
Yeah.
or the overachieving, or the overdoing, the overserving.
Hmm. Tie
We
right
ha
into us, worthiness.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we get to look
absolutely.
ourselves in the mirror and say, like, why is there this stumbling block? Why is there
Yeah.
a pattern where I don't absolutely allow my foundational worthiness to know that I'm worthy of love, I'm worthy of belonging, I'm worthy of rest, I'm worthy.
Inherently.
Yeah, worthy of my
Inherently.
rhythms
Yeah.
inherently, and that it's not earned.
Yes.
It is simply just who we are as dynamic, spectacular beings.
Yeah.
And I'm acutely aware of where delay gets in my way
Hmm.
as a woman and as an entrepreneur. And often when I see myself in delay, I have to go back to, there's some aspect where I'm feeling triggered
Hmm.
and I'm delaying, allowing the quiet time to listen within.
Yeah.
And when instead I acknowledge the delay, maybe it's simply because it's where I am in my cycle or my chapter of life.
Hmm.
But when I put that aside and allow the self-reflection and the inherent knowing of my worthiness and listening inside, it can blossom. So let me get more
Yeah.
specific. So when you're talking about, as entrepreneurs, there's times where we just feel exceptionally creative.
Hmm.
We feel exceptionally confident. We feel exceptionally turned on.
Hmm.
And other times where we really don't want to socialize. We're like, gosh, why did I sign up to do that thing? I just
Yeah.
want to stay in my sweats all day and eat a bunch of chocolate. There, I can explain it from a hormonal standpoint
Hmm.
and a rhythmic standpoint. And I like to break it down into seasons because
Yeah,
we
I
can.
love that.
For those of you that, like, you live in Houston, Cherise, so
Hmm.
your experience of seasons might be a little bit different, but hopefully for those of you listening, you can relate to the idea of winter, spring, summer, and fall, even if it's just, in books that you've read to your kids or you remember learning in school.
Yeah.
And so that winter time is what I would call our bleeding time. If you're not bleeding, you can pay attention. It's often the full moon or the new moon. Um, it's the time when we feel a little bit less social.
Hmm.
Our energy is a little bit slower, and we feel a little bit more or a lot more intuitive and emotionally connected when we allow for it. And that's the time when really truly we allow ourselves to rest.
Yeah.
We allow ourselves to journal and dream and get quiet with, what do I desire?
So important.
Yeah. What does my team want me to desire? What do my clients want? What do my children want? What does my husband want? But when I quiet down and listen inside, what comes up?
Right.
And then when we get into our springtime, that would be for those of you ovulating, that's your follicular phase. It's the estrogen dominant time. Estrogen is a proliferative hormone. It builds. it creates, it builds that endometrial lining. It is really resilient to working out and pushing ourselves and being out at parties and bringing the team together and sending out those creative ideas. Like, actually, like, think about springtime. The buds are poking out. Those flowers are getting ready to blossom. The animals are out there like, woo, time to make some babies,
Yeah.
know?
True.
And so we tend to feel more confident. We tend to feel more creative. We tend to be ready to socialize, throwing out the ideas and see if they stick. And so when we allow for those feminine secrets to be revealed, well, then we're allowing ourselves to push ourselves physically, pushing a little bit in the intermittent fasting world. Sharice, you and I have had a fun interaction there.
Yeah.
I used to not be a fan of intermittent fasting. Sharice knows this. But once I could see it in the framework of shifting it based on where we are with our hormones, then I was like, okay, now I
Makes
can get on board
sense.
with this.
Yeah, love that.
And then we go into our ovulatory time, or if you're not ovulating or you're not bleeding and you don't even know, that's generally going to be either the new moon or the full moon, or you just simply pay attention. You feel more confident. This is the time when your libido is on fire. You're ready to go put the thing into action, make the decision, sign the contract, do the TED Talk, publish the book, propose to your husband that you buy the house, sign up the kids for the private school, whatever it is. It's like, I'm putting it into action.
Yeah.
And your testosterone and your estrogen and your progesterone and your cortisol are all completely on board with that. Research shows that you're more likely, if you go into a job interview during this time, you're more likely to get the job.
Oh, interesting. This is follicular? No, this is
ovulatory.
Ovulatory. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
But once again, if you're listening and you're beyond menopause, your menstrual cycle is irregular, you've got the Mirena, or you're on, the pill, the patch, the ring, you're not ovulating, but I still want you to pay attention to these rhythms because they're still happening for you. Okay. Even beyond menopause, when you're no longer bleeding, the moon pulls tides. There still is a rhythmic nature. Some women, it's not quite as extreme, like the pendulum isn't swinging, but there's still these nuances that when we have the opportunity to honor, and we do, it is potent what I see happen on the other side. And so for those that are listening, starting a business, when we allow ourselves to really honor this and set boundaries, and actually, if you're going to, like, I'll look at my schedule 3 months in advance. If I'm going to launch, I will do my darndest to make sure that I'm live and launching during my ovulatory time.
That's good stuff.
Yeah.
And I think I was sharing this with you. And thanks so much for sharing that. We were talking about this off camera, and I was just sharing how I do the same thing now, probably for the last, 6 months or so. I will look, and here's the thing. I never in my 46, how old am I? I never literally even thought, to track it. I paid attention to my cycle, when I was having babies. But that was really the only time that I really paid attention. And so I think it's really important to just emphasize to just slow down just a little bit, just to pay attention, because even if you're not actually tracking it, like with a tracker or some type of app, even if you're not actually tracking it, if you really just kind of check in with yourself, you can feel the times when you're on fire, ready to go, all systems a go. And you can feel the times when you're kind of like, not
Totally.
so much, not really wanting to socialize. And then you can really use that to your benefit in business for sure, but then just in life. I mean, let's just talk about living a more fulfilled life.
Yep. Yeah. Totally. And you'll find patterns in your bloating, in your constipation, your diarrhea, your body aches, your libido, your irritability, how quickly the viper comes out. You'll notice patterns in headaches, all of it.
Yeah.
And I can explain it. I can help you understand it from a hormonal standpoint. Yeah. But if you just think about it in the context of seasons, I think that's a really kind of easy way to go, okay, when it's fall time, if you live in the Northern Hemisphere, right, The leaves are turning orange and yellow and brown and falling. It's starting to get a little bit colder. We're starting to put layers on. We have Thanksgiving and Halloween where we're, festive, and we're bringing in spices, and we're bringing people together that feel a little bit more intimate, right? So springtime, that's the time to throw out your ideas to anyone and everyone. Like, post it on Facebook. What do you think of this graphic? Like, it's Teresa, I'm thinking when you were launching the podcast, which graphic is your favorite? Like,
I love it. Yeah.
do that during springtime. In fall time, this is progesterone dominated. Okay. It's a time where we want to be, it's very nourishing. It's very creative and tender. Okay. Progesterone hides in the context of cortisol. We don't want a lot of stress.
Yeah.
And we want to bring in our inner counsel that really know us, and we trust them. And so we might still be in this creative space of brainstorming, what do you think about this idea? Or feeling kind of raw and emotional, the inner critic that serves us.
Yeah.
The inner critic is the most fierce during this fall time. And so we have the esteemed privilege of listening, but also not being taken down by it. And so
that's important.
Yeah.
That's so important.
Yeah. And there's a reason why we crave chocolate. There's a reason why we want to sit by the fireside with a good book. And the more that we really honor it, what I see is now your hormones are firing and much more spectacular. Your cortisol levels go back into healthy range, but also how you run your business becomes easy and flowing and in more resonance. And then your clients are happier, and you're bringing in more money, and now you have more success and even more ease. It's the self-fulfilling spiral that continues to build on itself.
For sure. For sure. I love that. And so you shared follicular, you shared ovulatory. You shared, did you share?
So I talk about fall. That would be your luteal. That would be your
got
luteal
it.
time. So for someone who doesn't know luteal, that's usually the week that we have our PMS, right? So the PMS week is the week before you start bleeding. Now, keep in mind, not everybody has a 28-day cycle.
Right.
Just like now they're learning that not everyone's circadian rhythm is actually on a 24-hour circadian rhythm either.
Yeah.
Right. So for some, it might be 21 days, 35 days. And so we're just tracking to go, okay, what is my innate rhythm? And how can I honor that regarding my expectations of my relationships, my leadership, and my libido, so that I can be the banks of the river at times and prevent a flood and keep that water going from the mountaintops down to the ocean? And when can I be the water and surrender and trust and relinquish and simply flow, knowing that that's going to be different as we pay attention to and honor this cyclic dynamic nature? Where, like, men, as an example, they're going to be producing testosterone every day. They get a surge about every 20 to 30 minutes. Whereas for women, we generally have a surge during our ovulatory time and right before we bleed. So how could we ever expect that we're going to feel the same, act the same, have the same desires, the same productivity? Right? Testosterone is going to impact your energy level, your confidence, your mood, your libido, your muscle tone. We're different, and we're spectacular and dynamic.
We're
And I love it.
spectacularly different.
Spectacularly different.
Phenomenally different. And it's so true. And so what I'm hearing so much is really increasing your awareness and honoring. It's one thing to increase awareness, like, oh, okay, I noticed that. Okay. And honoring what it is that we are feeling, experiencing, and being okay with honoring it, not judging it, I would no, it's as you mentioned, everything is cyclical. It's cyclical. And so, go ahead.
The beauty in that is, as women, we give other women permission to do the same.
So true.
And we give our daughters permission to do the same. And so I say a rising tide lifts all boats. And so I live this way, not just for my own well-being and my marriage and my business, but also my hope is that others are given permission to do the same. And that means we all have permission to set boundaries and say no and really look in the mirror through eyes of worthiness rather than self-loathing. All of it. We get to not just focus on the actions and the to-do lists and the diet and the supplements, but we get to take an account and responsibility for how we're doing these things.
Yeah. And, I mentioned this earlier. I think this is so important that we continue to have these level of conversations because, up until now, it's been a lot of male dominance in business, right? And I think just because of the internet and just where we are as a society, we're now having more of these conversations and educating each other more on, again, it doesn't, because the male, anatomy functions differently, and our anatomy functions differently as well. And it's really about knowing really how to, again, understand it and embrace it and honor it for not just our betterment, but for everyone that's connected to us.
Yep. And for those of you listening that are like, I don't know, this seems a little woo-woo, it seems a little abstract. I'll tell you that if you are struggling with your weight, if you're struggling with your sleep, if you're struggling with irritability, you're feeling tired, there's really intense salt or sweet cravings, you tend towards constipation, diarrhea, bloating. There's so many, anxiety, depression. All of this I can tie back to your gut microbiome, your adrenal function, and your hormone function based on how you are honoring your personal boundaries and your personal well-being. And this is just one way to start making some little shifts in what you eat, how you eat it, when you eat it. When you look in the mirror, how you look in the mirror, how you address your relationships, how you address how you run your business. It's pretty spectacular.
It is
to watch it all unfold. And then we get to feel better and our health, I always say the light bulbs turn on in the room, and then we move that the things in the way that might be burnout or adrenal fatigue or having a hard time prioritizing ourselves and getting to that weight that we're really, or the body composition we're desiring. We get all that out of the way. And then we really get to focus on, what are my visions? What impact do I want to have in the world? And how do I up level how I feel turned on by my life, my lover, and myself?
Love that. Oh my gosh, Maraya. All right. This is good stuff. When you think about, and we've been talking a lot about secrets, but when you think about other feminine secrets that you might want to share, maybe just one more that you might want to share, because you've said a lot. You've said a lot. This is like one of the podcast episodes that you'll definitely want to go back and listen to it again. And so,
Okay. Let's talk sex.
Well, why not?
Okay. Here's some secrets you might not know. Your clitoris, we think of about the size of a pea. It's actually about the size of your hand. You have, a woman has engorgement or an erection in the same way that a male does. It just shows up differently. And your arousal system is responsive, not spontaneous.
Your arousal system is, say that again.
Is responsive, not spontaneous.
Got it. Yes.
Okay. So they say as many as 60% of women either fake orgasm or have never had one. Okay. Let me tell you that you have a very intricate system anatomically, which is often the clitoris and all of the intricacies of it. That's more about the size of your hand. A woman, in order to reach engorgement or erection, it takes much longer than the typical male in general. And so it is okay. I always say, engorgement before penetration. I'm going there. Here we go.
Let's go.
And And
Engorgement before penetration. Okay.
engorgement before
Uh-huh.
penetration. And so for many of the women that say that they're struggling with, I don't feel turned on, I can't reach orgasm, we get to go, all right, well, is it that you're not turned on, or is it that you're not turned on by what's being offered?
Yeah.
And are you allowing yourself to wait for engorgement and how you receive whatever's being offered? So then I mentioned arousal is responsive, not spontaneous. For most female bodied individuals,
Mhm.
we're responsive. Okay. That engorgement, that response to stimulation really is like an all day thing. So the more we get to know our love language, our erotic
Mhm.
blueprint, right? The more we find ways to communicate our desires and our needs and feel heard and seen and understood. The more we honor this intrinsic, dynamic, rhythmic nature of how we be, now the turn on becomes more expansive. Whereas most male bodied individuals, their arousal is spontaneous.
Mhm.
There can be a nuclear siren going on. A naked woman walks in front and he's
It's like,
erect, ready to
"Ooh."
go.
Right.
Ying! Ready.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
simply different.
Mhm.
Okay. So when we talk about feminine secrets revealed, I think that our success in the world, our pleasure in the world, our ability to really fully express this feminine energy, that water,
Mm.
the fluidity, the
Mhm.
flow, for some of us, it can be expressed through feeling really cared for passionately. And so as we kind of dig into what does turn me on and how can I up level that? And if I am a type A personality where I'm running the ship a lot in business and showing up as the bank's get her done,
Mhm.
I'm trying to figure out what that looks like to navigate my dynamic nature. And I'm allowing myself to soften and flow and receive sexually
Mhm.
and allow myself to explore what I respond to. And if you are in partnership with a man or a woman, that you can find new ways to communicate
Yeah.
what you respond to.
Yeah, I think that right there is so important. I actually just did an interview with I don't know if you're familiar with Whitney to this, and we talked all about transcendental orgasms,
Mm.
and 5 different orgasms, and and this actually ties perfectly right back into the conversation that you and I were having just a second ago. In terms of secrets, and it's worthy, and it ties into worthiness, but being willing to ask for what it
Yeah.
is that you want. What
Yep.
does turn you on? What doesn't turn you on?
Yep.
And that's so important. And we even talked about language, and I'm really big on language, period, across the board. But even as we're expressing, because my belief is words are never neutral. They're either empowering or disempowering,
Mhm.
period. And with that, even as it relates to orgasms, we always say, achieving an orgasm or reaching or getting an orgasm instead of experiencing or allowing for an
Mhm.
orgasm, and I think even in the verbiage, the energy behind the verbiage makes a huge difference too. Because when you're trying to achieve something and you're missing it, you're like, I'm trying to get this orgasm. I'm trying. It's versus I'm gonna
Yeah.
allow to
Yeah.
experience an orgasm.
Mhm.
Totally different.
I'm gonna receive the touch. I'm gonna experience,
Yes.
or I mean, there's a whole thing around sexual magic where
Yeah.
individuals will utilize pleasure.
Hmm.
Maybe that's orgasmic, maybe not, but utilize
Hmm.
pleasure in the attainment of the goal. So when
Yes.
we start associating this goal with pleasure,
Hmm.
like if you're wanting to have a certain number of clients or reach
Yeah.
a certain income stream, what if
Hmm.
you orgasm or experience pleasure to that thing
Right.
when thinking about that thing? And yes, when we allow ourselves to ask for what we want, that
Hmm.
can be super vulnerable, it can be super confronting, sometimes not safe. And so how do we find new ways to
Mhm.
communicate it? And then if it's something really big where you're building up the courage, well, when you're in your winter time, you're getting clear with listening in, what do I want?
Yeah.
And your springtime, you're kind of getting creative, throwing out the possibilities with your friends and going, I think I want to ask for this thing.
Yeah.
And then when you're in your summertime or your ovulatory time, you make the big, bold
Do it.
request
Yeah.
and then you allow it to assimilate
Mhm.
during your fall time or your luteal phase and bring in your inner counsel to talk through, how
Yeah.
did that go? Like I tried something new. I allowed myself to associate pleasure with this big, bold thing that feels vulnerable and feels expansive, but
Mhm.
super confronting.
Mhm.
And it's a spectacular way of being. And you know, in the context of sex, it's just pleasure, right? So
It's
it's
pleasure. Yeah.
creation, it's abundance. It's not
Yeah.
just talking about orgasm. It's talking about
Right.
like feeling and connecting with ourselves and feeling with others. And so when this feminine secret's revealed,
Mhm.
we have this hidden feminine secret of being spectacularly passionate
Yeah.
and harnessing that passion into everything that we do and how we love and how we belong and how we receive
Yeah, for
and how
sure.
we produce and how we create.
All the things. And it's so
Mhm.
funny that, well, not funny like haha, but it's so interesting. When I started, and I actually shared this on one of the previous episodes, when I started prioritizing my pleasure,
Mhm.
sexually and non-sexually. I mean, and it's so funny that when we hear the word pleasure, I think 9 times out of 10, we immediately think, oh, sexual. But I was even sharing, I get so much pleasure out of making a matcha and grabbing my favorite. Do you
I
have a
was
matcha?
just thinking the same exact thing. It's okay.
And grabbing my favorite mug, selecting my favorite mug, and
Mhm.
measuring out the matcha,
Mhm.
and then letting the little electric stirrer thing, whatever it's called, do its thing, and
Totally.
watch the liquid kind of swell up, and then
Yes.
I just get so much pleasure, and then grabbing my mug and holding it and just really enjoying the warmth that's just kind of emanating from the mug. I
Yep.
get so much pleasure from that, and it's those little things. And it
Yep.
doesn't. I was sharing. It's not that I take longer to make my matcha. I just slow down and I'm present
Mhm.
to allow myself to enjoy making my
Yep.
matcha. You
Totally.
know, and
Totally.
um, and what I noticed is when I started to prioritize my pleasure, my business went through the roof.
Yep.
And so I can't say it enough. I can't say it enough. It's so important. It's so important that we not only just for business, but it's so important that we prioritize our pleasure across the
Yep.
board because it affects
Totally agree.
everything. It affects
Yeah.
how we show up. It affects how we interact. It affects our decision. It affects everything.
Mhm.
So,
And I love that you said it's not just sexual. Like, of course,
mhm,
orgasms can be pleasurable, but it can be in how we shift how I look outside my window and watch the wind going through the trees. It can be
yeah,
how I drink my matcha, how I choose to allow breath to go in and out of my body,
mm,
how I choose to
mhm,
smell something, how I
yeah,
experience music, how I experience touch, how I enjoy thoroughly this conversation and feeling the chair on my skin. I mean, stuff that doesn't take time. When we cultivate pleasure,
mhm,
um, and allow it to be enhanced, we all know what it feels like
yeah,
to see a woman walk into a room and across a room where pleasure exudes, it just like permeates through her cells.
mhm,
And it's contagious and it pulls us in because we feel it
right,
and we want some of that.
yeah.
Like she's got
It's
some honey.
palpable.
Yeah, she's got
Yeah,
some honey and we're like, I want some of her honey.
right, right. So
And
true.
that builds a business.
It
That
does.
builds a loving, fulfilling relationship.
Yeah.
That builds friendships that
Mhm,
feel expansive and deep.
mhm.
And then we go, oh my gosh, I'm having a big ripple effect in the world and I'm proud of who I'm being. And, Maya Angelou, she says, people won't remember what you said. They'll remember how you made them feel.
That's right, and it's so true. It is
Yeah.
so true. Oh my
Yeah.
God, Mariah, this has been such a beautiful and rich conversation. I have
Mhm.
thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you so much
Yeah, of
for
course.
your time, your energy, your wisdom
Mhm.
today. I certainly appreciate it.
Thank you. And
You are
thank you
so
for your time and wisdom and, what you're providing to your audience.
Oh my gosh. You're welcome.
Mhm.
And I know, so we talked a lot about um, tracking,
Yeah.
tracking our, and I love your analogy of the seasons. I think it's so
Yeah.
easy to grasp and understand and retain. And
Yeah.
so I love that. And again, we talked about menstrual tracking. I know you've created something really phenomenal to help our
Yeah.
listeners with
Yeah.
that. Yeah, you want to tell us
Yeah.
about it?
Sure. So I've created, I don't know, hopefully you feel like it's phenomenal. I created a menstrual tracker,
Mhm.
and it's a PDF. You can print it up, you can fill it out. It's free. And there are some apps out there. I've never found an app myself that I feel like is comprehensive and thorough, but it gives you a framework to track for about 3 months and just start paying attention. You'll see on there, um, you can do a check system, you can do a
Mhm.
rating system 1 through 10, but we get to look at, like, huh, isn't that interesting? I'm seeing a pattern in my libido, my energy level,
Mhm.
my constipation, my diarrhea, my bloating, my creativity, whatever it may be, and you're paying attention to where the moon is, if
Mm.
you'd like to track that.
I think that's so much fun. I
Yeah,
have fun with it. I like to bring fun and levity to everything. And for me, when I started tracking, it was like a fun game. And
yeah,
sometimes, and then when I got a little bit further in the process, I would notice like, I kind of want to do it. And I'm like, I bet you, let me check where I am. And I would look on my, my tracker
yeah,
and I'm like, oh,
yeah,
I knew it.
right,
But it was just because, I started paying attention.
yeah.
So I love this.
And
Yeah.
you can plan your CEO schedule based on it, but also
Yes.
it has been a game changer in my marriage because
Mm.
I can preemptively prepare for, okay, I'm going into the week where I know if he folds the kitchen towels and puts them in a different drawer, I'm gonna want to bite his head off.
I love
For
it.
For no logical reason other
Right.
than it's where I am hormonally.
Right.
And so we both know, and I'll preemptively add extra fiber and add extra magnesium and a little bit of extra CBD,
Yeah.
and I will preemptively give myself the pause where
Mhm.
before the viper comes out, I step away. And we both know where I am in my cycle. So he'll
Mhm.
know, I'm not even going to get into this conversation. It's
Mhm.
not Mariah speaking, it's her hormones.
Right.
and and so we get to
It's
use
low
it.
Raya. It's the
Yeah,
other one.
right.
Yeah.
It's the Gemini coming out.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we're using it not just for our own self-awareness,
Yeah.
but also as a clue into how we run our business and
Mhm.
how we navigate our relationships. One of my clients, she had a Mirena so she wouldn't bleed.
Mhm.
And I was watching the cycles. I'm like, "Girl, I'm telling you, if you just track, you're gonna see you wanna get a divorce every month at the same week."
Isn't that interesting?
And she got her Mirena taken out, and
Mhm.
about 4 months later, she called me up and she's like, "You're not gonna believe this. I think it's totally sick, like, I just wanna bite his head off the same time every month," and she was so proud of herself that it came from her, and of course, I'm like, "I told you so," but I
Isn't
didn't,
that funny? As long as you get it. As long as you get
Yeah.
it.
So you use the
I love
tracker
it.
as a tool of
Yeah.
self-discovery,
Love it.
and then allow yourself to look at, all right, where are the patterns?
Mhm.
And then hopefully you have someone who can be your support system, your accountability, who understands the ways to support you through nutrition, supplementation, personalized lifestyle shift
Yeah.
to adapt and preemptively prepare for when that next chapter is coming so that you can be fluid and
Mhm.
feminine and potent and powerful, but utilize it to maximize your full potential.
Yes.
And so that will hopefully be a useful tool for you to use the menstrual tracker,
Mhm.
um, pay attention to it, and then find someone that can support you in how to utilize the information.
Yeah.
I might be one of those individuals for you, Charisse. I don't know if
Mhm.
that's work that you do.
Yeah.
Um,
To an extent, yes.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I love that. So this is what I'll do is I'll put I'll put it in the show notes. I'll put a link to it in the show
Great.
notes so that way they can
Perfect.
get to it easily.
Great.
And yes, and so if they want more of you, Maraya, where can people
Yeah.
find you?
Yeah. I mean, I think the easiest place to start would be to go subscribe and listen to the Women's Vibrancy Code
Very good.
podcast because you're
I'm
here
gonna look
in the
that one up.
podcast world.
Yep.
You're also welcome to find me on YouTube, which is Maraya Brown. Um, on the link that Charisse has, there's the free menstrual tracker. I also have free adaptogen elixir recipes, and
Mhm.
I often will do free workshops. You're welcome to at any point register for those and just lean in. I'm quite approachable. And so just find me and reach out.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. And
Mhm.
again, I'll just link all that stuff. I'll have the team link all that stuff below so they
Great.
can find you easily. Again,
Mhm.
Maria, thank you so
Mhm.
very
Thank
much.
you. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you're so welcome. And for the listeners, as always, I love you. I appreciate you. And I'm so, so very grateful for you joining me for this episode today. And I look forward to next week for another transformational episode on the Sharice Williams Show. Bye for now.
Ta-ta.